Part 211. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2103. The emperor asked Yang Heshu's opinion. Yang Heshu immediately requested to stay in Xiaohu. He said that he did not bring his family when he returned to Kyoto this time because he was worried about all the things in Xiaohu. The emperor sighed and let Yang Heshu go out of the palace, and in the evening he ordered Yang Heshu to commit crimes, put Shangguan under house arrest, and fined him 3 months' salary. However, the Ministry of Officials was preparing a document for his promotion to the prefect of Xiaohu. This matter is not a secret. Even the crown princess has a courtier talking about it in a joking manner. This is a compliment, and it is said that the Yang family is going to get up again. The crown princess smiled and waved her hand to let the servants back down, and the three of them said to Manbao, "It's so simple. I heard the crown prince mention that the situation in Xiaohu is not good now." Chang Yu looked worried. "Then why did Master Yang go?" Manbao said, "I just went because it was bad." She said, "No one knew what Xiaohu was like before, but now that Xiaohu is like this, he can't just walk away." Manbao was still very confident in Yang Heshu, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, since senior brother Yang can pass through the court and middle stage safely, then Xiaohu is not a problem." Manbao glanced at the sun outside, got up and said goodbye. Niang, it's getting late, I'm leaving the palace to go home." The crown princess also glanced at the position of the sun, and nodded. "Go, you have only come back, and you have to reunite with your family." Mingda immediately got up and said, "Sister-in-law, I'll take her off." Chang Yu also stood up immediately, "I'll go too." So the two walked slowly towards the gate of the East Palace with Manbao between them, and Mingda asked her, "Last month, you wrote a letter saying that there is a way to prevent smallpox in the western regions, which is called the vaccination method." "Yes," Manbao said, "I want to look for it." Mingda was very envious. "I happened to hear the father and mother talk about it, saying that if you can find this method, it will be infinite merit. It means that the emperor is also inclined to agree to let Zhou Man go to the western regions." Manbao was refreshed. "Is that what your majesty really said?" Mingda nodded. "My father has already sent a letter to the Angzi Protectorate after receiving the document, if there is such a way there, but Angzi is too far away from the capital, and even if the journey goes smoothly, it will take 2 or 3 months for the letter to spread. Come back, not to mention that the Angzi Protectorate may have to investigate. This is not a rush, so the clerk who delivers the letter must be walking slowly, more than a month to go, and more than a month to come back, but it will only be 2 or 3 months. Manbao, who was holding his heart, felt a little relieved, and felt that she could actually take so many days off. Why don't she go to Dr. Lu and Dr. Xiao tomorrow to talk about this kind of acne? Well, tomorrow Imperial Physician Lu will be on duty, so go to Imperial Physician Xiao. By the way, I went to Taiyuan Hospital today to listen to people's comments. Xiao Tai has made great achievements in fighting the epidemic, and is going to resume his original position." Mingda smiled and said, "I may not know if you want to ask about other official positions, but I do know this. Imperial Physician Xiao is indeed going to resume his original position." She said, "The capital was also dangerous a few years ago. Some people secretly hid in the capital to seek medical advice. It was Imperial Physician Xiao who helped Tang and Guo County magistrates find them all. In fact, it was not as simple as finding out. The situation in the capital at that time was not much better than that of Xiaohu at that time. No one knew how many smallpox patients had hid in the capital and how many people they had come into contact with. And there are many people in the capital. At that time, it was Imperial Dr. Xiao who did everything possible to lock up and isolate all those who might be in contact with the smallpox patient and their belongings, waiting for them one by one and treating them one by one. In addition, the medicinal materials and fabrics needed in Xiaohu and other places at that time also required him to assist the Ministry of Household. The emperor looked at it later and saw that Imperial Dr. Lu was good at medicine, but Imperial Dr. Xiao was better at managing these matters. Moreover, Imperial Dr. Xiao's medical skills were also very good, so the emperor brought Imperial Dr. Xiao up again. Mingda said, I haven't made an decree yet, but it's already inseparable. Chang Yu said, I said earlier, you have also made a great contribution this time. When you come back from Xiaohu, can you grab the seat of the courtyard? Who knows that you actually intend to go to the western regions? Alas, it is far and away there. Desolate, I heard there are many horse thieves. Man Bao said, even if I don't go to the western regions, I won't be able to be the head of the hospital. Not to mention there is Imperial Dr. Lu, there is also Imperial Dr. Lu above me. In terms of qualifications, he is not inferior to me. Mingda asked her curiously, do you want to be the principal of the hospital? Man Bao said, I don't want to. It's that I don't want to now, not that I don't want to. Mingda understood, she smiled slightly, nodded and said, I understand. She and Chang Yu sent people to the gate of the palace, and the three of them stood at the gate of the palace and said, it's obviously impossible for you to go to the western regions alone. Have you thought about inviting someone from the court to go with you? Man Bao said, and my two junior brothers. She smiled and said, your concubine also comes with us, and we will write back to you from time to time. Mingda blushed slightly and said, you know that I'm not talking about him, you are young, it's obviously impossible to leave such a big thing to the three of you, the father should let you choose from Honglu Temple. Come out alone. This is to let them go to Honglu Temple in advance to find someone. Man Bao thought for a while, then lowered his voice and said, you said, can I let my teacher go to Honglu Temple, and then let my teacher take us there? In this way, all the people who go there are their own people. After agreeing to go on a study tour, they also have to look for meteorites. Mingda also pondered, and also lowered his voice to reply to her, it's not impossible, but this matter has to be done with the prince's brother, the father will not condone you. But it is not difficult for the prince to put the servants in the Changguan pavilion into the Honglu temple. Man Bao thought about it, how is the prince feeling recently? Chang Yu couldn't help laughing out loud, when you asked this, it was like a traitor written in the book. Man Bao. Mingda also laughed out loud and said to her, it's not good or bad, it's spring, he's busy, I haven't seen him for almost half a month. Okay, I'll go back and find a way. This kind of begging for people to do things, or asking a boss who is the boss to do things, has never been experienced, so I plan to go back and ask a gentleman with rich life experience. Or go to ask Swexian Yang and Swexian Tang tomorrow. Anyway, they are going to see brother Yang tomorrow. The Yang family was busy with traffic. Obviously, it was no secret that the emperor liked to value Yang Heshu in the capital. Man Bao and his car were brought in just after they reached the side door. The servant put their car in a corner of the yard and said with a smile, Miss Man, young Master Bai, second young Master Bai, Master Tang has already come and is following us. The uncle is talking in the study at the back. A girl came to lead them there. When passing by the side door of the main courtyard, he heard lively voices coming from inside, and Man Bao asked with a smile, why are there so many guests at home? The girl smiled and said, the uncle came back safely, and all the relatives and friends came to visit. It's just that there are not many people who can meet Yang Heshu in person, and most of the people who come are female relatives, and everyone is crowded with Mrs. Ho in the main courtyard. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2104. The girl led them around the main courtyard and went to the back. When they reached the courtyard of the study, they happened to meet a young lady who turned around with a disappointed face, and saw Zhou Man, and the three couldn't help but stop. Ziyuheng, who are these three? Ziyuheng stopped with a smile and said, Miss Biao, this is the uncle's guest. She hesitated for a while, and then introduced her to Zhou Man and the others. "This is the cousin of our house." Seeing that she seemed to be a little older than her, Man Bao smiled and saluted. "So it's Miss Biao." Seeing that she was doing Confucian rituals, Miss Biao hesitated for a while before squatting down and performing her own rituals, but seeing that Zai Yuheng did not intend to introduce, she felt a little embarrassed for a while. Man Bao also glanced at Zai Yuheng, then introduced himself with a smile. "My name is Zhou Man, these are my two junior brothers." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang also saluted, then stopped awkwardly and looked at each other. Seeing that they seemed to have nothing to say, Zai Yuheng reminded, "Miss Man, young Master Bai, my uncle is still waiting." The three nodded to Miss Biao, then smiled and went into the yard with Zai Yuheng. Zai Yuheng only sent people to the gate of the courtyard, and someone from inside came out to pick them up. The three of them breathed a sigh of relief when they entered the study, and couldn't help but laugh when they looked at each other. Magistrate Tang sat by the fire and filled tea. Seeing it, he asked, "What funny thing happened? Let's hear it." "No," Bai Shan naturally wouldn't say in front of the host that the host's servants are not to mention it's not a big deal. He pulled Man Bao to sit down on the low stool beside the stove, and smiled, "Why only nothing to eat for tea?" Tang he turned his head and said to Yang Heshu, after a trip to Xiaoshu, "Why are you all so greedy when you come back?" Yang Heshu smiled and said, "Before Xiaoshu lacked meat and vegetables, and suddenly returned to the capital, I naturally wanted to make up for it." Tang he asked, "Will it be difficult for you to take over Xiaoshu now?" Yang Heshu smiled lightly, "The hardest time has been passed. No matter how difficult it is in the future, can you still be sad about the 4 months worth of it?" Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, who had experienced in Xiaoshu, nodded together. "Yes, no matter how difficult it is it still difficult when the epidemic is rampant?" Tang County Magistrate asked, "Those people in Xiaoshu hate you." "Niu Kong will be released in a few days," he said. "He didn't introduce smallpox maliciously, so the law cannot ask him for the crime. With him and the Niu family, he wants to turn me away. It's not hard to have hatred in your body." Tang he reminded, "Enough is enough. Yang Heshu, when I arrive in Xiaoshu, I will persuade the Niu family to leave Xiaoshu and return to their hometown to live. Niu Shishi will definitely not be able to go back. His dereliction of duty this time is serious and considered a felony, and most of them will be sentenced and possibly exiled." Originally, the Niu family had in-laws in Xiaoshu, and Niu Thornchi had been operating in Xiaoshu for many years. Even if his Zishi family could continue to operate in Xiaoshu, with the current reputation of the Niu family, there would be no good results for them to stay in Xiaoshu. In fact, Xiaoshu's public opinion has been guided by others before, and Yang Heshu is not ignorant, but the city was full of sorrows at that time. He knew that everyone needed a vent. If he fought with them immediately, not to mention the harm to the survivors, right, the blasphemy of the dead, for him, may not necessarily win. But he has left Xiaoshu now, and even his wife and children have avoided the village outside the city. At this time, it is more convenient for him than disadvantage for the people to talk about it. Humans are always naturally inclined towards the weak, especially if they haven't made a big mistake, within all the righteousness. In front of the 4 of them, he didn't hide his scheming, and even taught the ignorant Bai Shan to say, "Sometimes it's better to show someone's weakness instead of being weak." Tang County Magistrate tutored, "You are not a gentleman at all. Be careful to teach them badly. Mr. Zhuang will come to you to settle accounts." Yang Heshu laughed and said, "You're right. So don't mention it anymore." Bai Shan and the others were a little disappointed. Man Bao was going to see Imperial Physician Xiao in the afternoon. He was not very free. He came here today because he was worried about Yang Heshu. So they left after having lunch at Yang's house. The meal was used in the study, and Yang Heshu didn't let them go to see the elders in his family, but sent the 4 of them to the side yard. After watching them get into the carriage, they nodded and watched them leave. When the two carriages had gone out, the smile on his face faded, he tilted his head and said to the servant at the side, "Go and ask Wan Tian, who led Miss Man and the others to the study this morning." "Yes, who did you meet or see on the way?" The servant responded and waited for the uncle to go back to the study before going to Wan Tian. However, Wan Tian came over within a quarter of an hour, and started talking about Zhou Man and the others when they got off the carriage, all the way to the study, and said everything in detail. Yang Heshu is practicing calligraphy and meditation. Wan Tian said, "Master, do you want to talk to the steward? That girl is too unruly, and they have to let Miss Man and the others speak for themselves." Yang Heshu said, "She's just not smart enough. Zhou Man and the others haven't taken it to heart. Why should we fight? But the girls in the house are not as good as they used to be. They didn't even teach well." Wan Tian lowered his eyes and thought, what is not comparable to the past? It is clear that even the little girl next to the young lady is not comparable to the young lady, and Mrs. Ho does not know how to manage the house. Yang Heshu looked at the words he had written, frowned slightly, and said, "Pack up, I'm a little ill, and it's hard to recuperate from the busyness of the mansion recently. Let's go to Zhuangzi for a few days, and wait for the official document from the Ministry of Officials to come down to us." "Just go." Wan Tian was stunned for a moment and then asked, "Don't you still want to know if Miss Man and the others are going to the western regions?" Man Bao said that His Majesty has sent a letter to Angzi. It will take a long time to come back and forth. I'm afraid there will be no results in a while. Let's go back to Xiaoshu and wait. When they go to the western regions, they have to go from Xiaoshu past. Wan Tian thought so too, so he turned to clean up. They had only been home for 2 days, and they had very little luggage, so they didn't need to pack at all and left in one roll. Yang Houi was not at home, and when he came home in the afternoon to find out, his sons all went out of the city to live in the village, the housekeeper sweated on his forehead and said, "This servant sees the uncle's bad health, so it's better to take a dip in the soup spring, it's only February. Well, when the cold wind from the north blows, it's cold to the core." Lord Yang glanced at him and said, "You don't need to make up for him, he must be disgusted by the guests disturbing him too much." Yang Houi was a little angry at first, and he would live in another courtyard outside the city when he came back, and he had not spoken to him. But after getting angry, thinking of his son who lost so much weight, he felt distressed, so he waved his hand and said, "Forget it, he can go if he wants, and let someone send him something. Xiaoshu is desolate and there are many good things. Now that he is in the capital, he will take the opportunity to make up for it. Look at how thin this is. When I went to Lujiang County to be the county magistrate, it was not so miserable. Xiaoshu is still a prefecture, See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2105. Man Bao sat on the chair and took a sip of the herbal tea, contentedly. "It's still Imperial Dr. Xiao, you have a lot of good things here. The red bean is fried just right and fragrant." Imperial Physician Xiao put her hands together in front of her abdomen and waited for her to drink 2 sips of tea before she said, "Tell me, what are you looking for?" Man Bao laughed, "Look at what Imperial Dr. Xiao said, can't I come to see you if I have nothing to do?" Imperial Physician Xiao lifted his eyelids and glanced at her, but said nothing. It's only 3 days off, and he came to him the next day. It's impossible to think with your toes if it's all right. Man Bao put down the teacup and sat upright and said, "I really have something to do with Dr. Xiao." Imperial Physician Xiao showed a surly expression and gestured for her to say. Man Bao said, "I want to ask about the method of vaccination." Her previous excerpt, Imperial physician Xiao, also read it? Not only did he read it, but the emperor also invited him and imperial physician Lu to ask if this method was feasible. Zhou Man wrote very clearly in the book, if, as she said, smallpox will continue to weaken the toxicity, then it may be possible, but looking at the spread of smallpox this time, there is no trend of weakening toxicity. That's because it is passed down from person to person. What we have to do is to use the healed acne scab to spread it again, even twice, 3 times. She said, the first person resisted smallpox, the toxicity in the scab will diminish. Imperial physician Xiao thought for a while, then shook his head, this is just your guess, there is no evidence, and it is impossible to take it for granted. Man Bao also knew this. Those were all from the books. Teacher Mo said it was verified, but that was in that time and space, not in this world. Moreover, Man Bao wanted to confirm it herself, so she said, then let's find someone to try it out. Imperial Dr. Xiao was startled, but did not expect her to be so courageous. Your Majesty has already sent a letter to ask Angzi, if there is such a method in the western regions, our imperial hospital will send someone to look for it. Now that the 8 characters have not been written, we will use someone to try it. Man Bao said, the journey to Angzi is long and the journey is full of dangers. Who knows when Xian will come back? And they don't know medical skills. What if they miss this method when they inquire? She said, Sir, how many people have died from smallpox this time? But I heard from some old people that the reason why so few people died was because of the strong national power, and the imperial court was responsible for most of the people's medicine, otherwise, I don't know how many people can't afford medicine, and I don't know how many people look down on doctors, and I don't know how many people will die by then. She said, this disease is too tiring, even if it is over, many people also have pockmarks on their faces and bodies. Regardless of men and women, after leaving pockmarks, their future marriage will be affected, and it is no different from a disability. I still want to be early. Find a way to prevent it? Dr. Xiao shook his head and said, what are you worried about, young man? Your life is still very long. I'm not in a hurry even at my age. Man Bao looked at him silently. Imperial physician Xiao waved his hand and said, all right, I will tell your majesty that I will see if I can find a few prisoners sentenced to beheading from the prison of the Ministry of Punishment to try. Man Bao asked curiously, will they be spared the death penalty? No, said Imperial physician Xiao, but instead of beheading, it can be replaced by hanging. There are several types of death sentences. Beheading is the most cruel one. Separation of the body is cruel even for the prisoner. Legend has it that one cannot be reincarnated as a human after death. Man Bao asked, what if there is no execution of the prisoner, or the execution of the prisoner does not agree? Then we can only choose the prisoner to be executed, but then he won't die. Dr. Xiao thought for a while and said, it's really possible that no prisoner to be executed will be found. This is the beginning of spring, and it was only after the autumn of last year. Kill a wave. Even though Dajin is so big, not many people are sentenced to be executed for crimes every year, most of them will be escorted to Beijing for review, and only some special cases will be executed locally. Imperial physician Xiao said, I have to go to the punishment department to inquire about the news. Instantly, it felt so complicated. Imperial physician Xiao looked up at her and shook his head, not wanting to keep her anymore. Okay, I'll take note of this matter, you can go back. Man Bao smiled and said, I haven't wished your lord to be promoted to the director of the court yet. I heard people say that you have done a great job this time, so your majesty will give you the post of director of the court again. There will be a drink in the house. Are you celebrating? The corners of Imperial physician Xiao's mouth twitched, but he quickly pressed it down, it's just that the official resumes his post, what's there to celebrate? He suddenly remembered something, looked her up and down and said, I almost forgot, you and Tai Zheng have also made great contributions this time, and the court should have a reward. He thought about it, maybe he can be promoted. Man Bao was refreshed and asked, is it an upgrade? Dr. Xiao nodded, it's possible. Man Bao got excited, and then paused, so it's possible that I and Imperial Physician Lu are still of the same grade, or is he taller than me? When Imperial Physician Xiao saw her expression, he couldn't help but laugh, you two went to Xiaohu this time, and it has been 4 months of hardships. Why haven't you cultivated your feelings yet? Man Bao did not speak. Dr. Xiao shook his head slightly and said, Dr. Lu is the chief officer of this foreign mission, and he is supposed to have the most credit, but from the reported cases, you have cured the most people and the mortality rate is the lowest, so your credit is also it's not too small, the official department should have the same rank. Man Bao was happy. Imperial Physician Xiao gave her another blow, but don't be too happy too soon. Your age and qualifications are here, and the Ministry of Personnel may consider these 2 points, and it's not necessarily the case. Man Bao, sir, can you stop panting when you speak, what if I expect too much and end up disappointed? Imperial Physician Xiao laughed and waved, okay, let's go back, we can't decide this matter. It is true that Imperial Physician Xiao can't make the decision, but the Emperor will ask his opinion. After all, he is the head of the Imperial Hospital again. Dr. Xiao's opinion is that both of them will be promoted to half-grade. After all, Zhou Man did very well this time, he said, and Dr. Zhou dared to rush to the front at such a young age, and he should have been commended for being so daring. The Emperor nodded. So Imperial Physician Xiao was promoted to the head of the hospital, Imperial Physician Lu was promoted from rank 5, Physician Zhou Man was promoted from rank 5, and Physician Zhen was promoted to rank 6. In addition, there are also the rewards that the Ministry of Housing gave them this time, all of which are food and use. For example, half a sheep, half a fan of pork, a little rice noodles and some cloth. They are not very precious, but they are quite honorable. After Man Bao took the official document, he went to the Ministry of Housing with her father and Saturday Lang to get things. After taking the things, the father and son drove the car all the way home happily, and Lao Zhutu sat on the carriage and commented, I have seen it all, when the pig slaughterer was dividing the pork, Imperial Dr. Lu was better than ours. A little more. Man Bao said, he's too old, Dad, what will this sheep's head do? The old Zhutu thought for a while and then said, after steaming, I will sacrifice it to the ancestors, and then give it to your sister-in-law. Because he doesn't know what to do. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2106. In spring, there are few vegetables and a lot of meat, but the price of meat has risen a bit recently. As soon as the meat was pulled home, Xiao Qian's family asked Zhou Dalan's brothers to chop the meat, and then distributed some to the Bai family's side, and the rest was either steamed or marinated. She also cut a few pieces of very good pork and hung it in the kitchen to smoke it. The family likes to eat bacon, and it is easy to bring it when going out. Man Bao and Bai Shan Bai Erlang ate to their heart's content, and even Bai Dalan couldn't help but bring his daughter-in-law and son back to live, and after 2 days of eating, they moved back to Changqing Lane. After Man Bao finished eating, she brought 2 pots into the palace and distributed them directly to the colleagues in the Thai hospital. Then she took some in a bowl and sent them to Xiao Yuanzheng, and asked him with a smile, Xiao Yuanzheng, about the pox vaccination. Have you spoken to your majesty? Xiao Yuan stretched out his hand to take the bowl, put it in front of him and opened his own food box for lunch, saying, speaking of which, His Majesty has approved it, we are lucky, there are 3 prisoners who have been beheaded by the Ministry of Punishment, and they are exempted. They all agreed to change from beheading to hanging. He said, however, it has not yet been decided where the person will be placed. It cannot be in the heavenly prison of the punishment department, or even in the capital. Man Bao pondered, it's better to be an independent little Zhuangzi, and empty the people inside. Except for us, everyone is only outside, and their lives are governed by their own self-discipline. She said, they have healthy limbs. If they are only infected with smallpox, they should be able to take care of each other when we stagger the time. Xiao Yuan is nodding, if you can find someone who has had acne, it would be best to take care of them. He paused and then said, before the capital has statistics, there are records from the county government, but they are not willing to do so. At that time, the situation in the capital was special. Many people were recruited forcibly, and then they were sent home after receiving the money. This time, it was an experiment at the Taiyuan hospital, so it was obvious that they could no longer be recruited. After thinking about it, Man Bao said, I'll ask the magistrate Tang. The next day, when Man Bao went to the imperial physician's office for class, he wrote a letter to the magistrate of Tang, asking the officer from the imperial physician's office to send it to the Chang'an County Yap. In fact, she thought that the magistrate Tang would reply to her with a letter. Who knew that the magistrate Tang would personally find the imperial physician's office at noon? Are you going to experiment with the vaccination method? Man Bao nodded, let's try human pox first. If it is as effective as the rumors say, then we will find a safer method for cowpox. Tang County magistrate lowered his eyes and thought for a while, then said, all right, I'll go find someone for you. There were records of people who had acne before, as well as the people who were cured of smallpox this time, and no one could find them easier than him. The magistrate Tang asked, how much is the salary? This Man Bao really doesn't know. She paused and said, this is a dangerous thing, even if they have acne, they will not be able to go out to meet relatives and friends for a long time, and the psychological pressure is also great. I will tell Xiao Yuan Zheng to give as much as possible. What is the average salary now? Tang County magistrate said, the people in the city are between 600 and 800 wen. Man Bao pondered, then give them 900 wen a month, or 1,000 wen. Okay, Tang County magistrate stood up and said, let's talk with Xiao Yuan, try to improve as much as possible. You also said that taking care of smallpox patients, especially death row inmates, they are definitely not willing, and I'd like to pay a higher price. Find someone for you. Man Bao hurriedly warned, it's best to be an adult man, honest and obedient, or a strong old woman. Tang County magistrate said there was no problem. He took 2 steps outside before he remembered it, and turned to look at her. Man Bao, so is there really a way to inoculate acne in this world? Man Bao said, am I the kind of person who is liar? Of course there are. The magistrate Tang couldn't help but sighed about her good luck. It seems that God really loves you only. You want to go to the western regions to study, but there is a vaccine method. Man Bao just smiled. Tang magistrate went back to find someone, while Man Bao went back to Xiao Yuan to ask for money. At this point, going to Xiao Yuan Zheng is quite generous, he said, I will ask the Ministry of Household for money when I look back. Since the Ministry of Punishment has agreed, then this matter will be done. I thought about it all night and finally found it. There are 3 places. One is Chang'an County or Wanyan County, where a few houses are built to guard people, the other is the mountain temple outside the city. It will put people in the temple for the time being. It is spring now, and many prisoners will not be escorted into Beijing until the spring and autumn, so now the temple is empty, and the access control inside is still strict. I think it can be used. The other is to ask your majesty for a few rooms in Huangchuang, he said. The first one costs money, and Chang'an County and Wanyan County may not agree to it, but they are small officials and must be the Ministry of Punishment. Bully them with His Majesty. The second rule is the easiest and most convenient to hold now, but it is more difficult to clean up afterwards. You also know that smallpox survives for a long time, so I am afraid that they will miss it when they live in it, and then Xiaoqiu will live in it. The prisoners will take the smallpox out, and the other two places, after the big deal is used up, the house will be demolished, and everything will be set on fire. The third rule is that it's convenient, saves money, and can be cleaned up afterwards. As I said, if it's hard to burn it, it's not hard to seal it up if you don't burn it. Anyway, Huangzhuang is so big, as long as it is said that there is smallpox in it, he will not dare to enter even if he has 10 courage. Manbao rubbed his chin and thought, thinking that what she lacked most at the moment was time. She had to finalize the decision to go to the western regions before Angzi's letter came back, so she said, let's choose Shanshen Temple or Huangzhuang. Please discuss with the Ministry of Punishment first, if not, I will go to His Majesty. Xiao Yuanzheng raised his eyebrows, and responded with a smile after a while. When she left, she looked at her back and shook her head and laughed, you're still young, and you're too motivated. How can you be impatient with such a thing? That being said, Xiao Yuanzheng still went to the Ministry of Punishment to communicate. Of course, the Ministry of Punishment did not agree. Just as Xiao Yuan was thinking about it, it would be nice to lend it out for a while, but what if the Ministry of Punishment used it to actually get smallpox? Not to mention the patients, the yamen of their punishment department also cherished their lives, okay. So they refused, no matter what Xiao Yuanzheng said. So Manbao went to ask the emperor for the ping and pulse the next day. After getting the emperor's ping and pulse, she also took the opportunity to ask the queen for a pulse. Finally, she happily returned to the Tai hospital and said to Xiao Yuanzheng, it's still the empress. Reasonable. Xiao Yuanzheng knew that this matter was inseparable. The emperor and the queen had dinner together in the evening, and when he heard the queen's words, he couldn't help blowing his nose and said, I didn't say no, but I saw that she was so anxious to stop her, so as not to make mistakes. Why did she find you here? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2107. The queen smiled and said, Your Majesty, how old is she? A young man of this age is just at the moment of great ambition, so why should he attack her at this time? It's better to let her go forward. If the method of vaccination is really useful, she will go to the western regions. She will definitely experience it. The emperor sighed, I only wanted to suppress her temper when I saw that she was so excited to go to the western regions. She was rash in the capital and in the palace. If we don't blame her, it will be fine. On the grasslands and deserts, others but she may not be favored. The queen smiled and said, anyway, the concubine has already promised her, and your majesty can do it. Emperor, what can he do? He can't slap the queen in the face, right? So the next day, Xiao Yuanzheng got the right to use a house in a Huangzhuang outside the city, and Manbao also got a warrant to leave the palace at any time. So Manbao quietly went home and stayed for 2 days. Every day, he went directly to the imperial physician's office when he had a class. He went to Huangzhuang to see the house arrangement when he didn't have a class. The emperor's palace was in a good location. He chose the palace that he went to every year, and gave them a house guarded by servants. Huangzhuang is very big. After the wheat, beans, and rice are planted, people need to guard it. There is a large house in the village for the servants, and it surrounds the house where the masters live. In fact, this is the decoration. It is not far from the capital, and it is in the east of Daming Palace. The Longshao Canal flows through Zhuangzi. Every year on the second day of February, the emperor brings the princes and princesses here to open plows, so Zhuangzi is not small. The house assigned to Zhou Man and the others is far from the Longshao Canal, in the northeast corner of Zhuangzi, which is the farthest point from the Daming Palace. It is convenient for everyone except the imperial doctors who are inconvenient to come here. Imperial physician Lu walked into the already furnished house, but still couldn't help but look disgusted. It's too rudimentary. Xiao Yuanzhang said, it is a temporary place for servants to guard the rice fields and drive away birds. How good can it be? So Imperial Dr. Lu was a little dissatisfied. He glanced at Zhou Man and said, we don't need to be in such a hurry, it won't take long for Chang'an County to build a new house. Man Bao was doing the final examination and said, it can be 1 day sooner, I think it's fine now, this one is for patients, this one is for the people we invited, and this one is for in the banquet hall, they can relax and we can rest, and the soldiers will watch from a distance. Imperial Physician Xiao nodded, this matter is handled by the Imperial Guard and the Ministry of Punishment. We don't need to worry about it. We just treat the patient and see how the smallpox develops. Man Bao nodded and said, the patient can be brought in. Xiao Yuanzhang went out to communicate with people, but the three did not leave. Not long after, the 3 prisoners who had been escorted outside came in wearing anklets. They were all 3 men. Man Bao had read their profiles. One was 19, one was 23, and the other was 45. Man Bao glanced at their faces, motioned them to sit down, gave them a pulse, and said to Imperial Physician Lu of Xiao Yuanzhang, we have to make up first. Xiao Yuanzhang and Imperial Physician Lu also looked at them one by one, and they agreed with them, so they thought about prescribing a medicated meal. They thought it was a medicated meal, but the servants who got the order only thought that they were too kind to these 3 prisoners, not lotus root stewed pork ribs. Is the mutton stew with yam? The 3 prisoners did not expect such a good thing, they thought it would be so good to eat when the head was cut off. Thinking about it this way, they are even less resistant to this experiment. Anyway, they are all dead, and it is not bad to think about having a good life before death. Not only did they eat well, but the imperial physicians also asked the servants they invited to boil hot water for them to bathe and change into new clothes. Except for the shackles on their feet, everything else was different from the prison. The 3 of them lived in a room with 3 beds. The beds were clean, and the quilt was not only clean but also new. The 3 of them were still a little dazed when they sat by the bed. Imperial Physician Lu stared at them and said, "It's so good to you, you have to take good care of your illness and live. If you do it well, you can enjoy this good day for a while longer." The 3 of them immediately said that they would be obedient. After they were washed, Man Bao came in with a needle bag to find them, and simply gave them needles to condition their bodies. Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu were sitting on the side chatting with her. "You are too concerned, by the way, what's the point of this injection?" Man Bao knew that they were stealing and didn't care. He gave them a needle to tell them why they were doing this. He made it clear how many inches and how many inches. Everywhere is clear. Xiao Yuan was rubbing his beard and listening carefully. Others may think that acupuncture for healing is more important, but all doctors know that acupuncture for self-cultivation is actually more rare. Looking at the acupuncture methods Zhou Man is using now, they have never heard of it. It seems that this little girl still has something in her stomach. There are a lot of things, but it's still as generous as ever. Because of Zhou Man's generosity, Xiao Yuanzheng also became generous. He ran the household department for 2 days in a row, prepared a lot of needed medicinal materials and ingredients, and nourished the human body. After 7 or 8 days, the 3 people began to prepare acne scabs. The acne scab was taken out by Zhou Man and packed in a bottle. When Imperial Physician Lu saw that she really brought back this dangerous thing from Xiaohu, her brows twitched. Fortunately, she kept it well, otherwise. This thing is just like a biochemical weapon. If it is smashed by many people, it is comparable to an army of 100,000. The 3 imperial physicians all wore masks, poured out the pox scabs in the bottle and grinded them into powder. Man Bao took out a small thin cotton cloth, and after Dr. Lu had adjusted the powder, he scooped some of it with a spoon and put it on the cotton cloth. Man Bao carefully wrapped it with a clip, and Xiao Yuan Zheng wrapped it several times with the attached cotton thread, and this was done for a pox. The three adjusted 3 in a row, then went to the next room together and told the 3 nervous prisoners, "Let's start getting pox today." The 3 of them were nervous, and then looked at the 3 imperial physicians, one of whom took a piece of cotton from a small wooden box and stuffed it into their noses, with the cotton thread left outside. The 3 of them waited for a long time without waiting for the pain, but the 3 imperial physicians took a step back and nodded with satisfaction, and said to the 3 of them, "The vaccinia in the nose cannot be removed. From now on, it can only be removed at night." Dr. Xiao said, "It takes 6 hours, and one person has to watch all the time. Which of you comes first?" Man Bao volunteered, "I am me." Imperial physician Lu rolled his eyes and said, "No one robs you, you should stay." Xiao Yuan Zheng told her, "You should also be careful. Although you have passed through Xiaohu, you can't be careless here, and be careful not to stumble." Man Bao expressed his understanding, and after sending the 2 away, he put away the things, and then stared at the 3 at the door. The 3 prisoners, "Suddenly I'm a little bored, and my back is a little chilly. See you tomorrow." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2108. Man Bao counted the time, and when it arrived, she took out the cotton balls stuffed in the noses of the 3 of them, and then threw them into the charcoal basin and set it on fire. After confirming that it was cleaned up, she said to the 3 of them, "Get some rest early, you suffered a lot in prison before, you have to go to bed early and get up early so that you have a better chance of survival." The 3 people who didn't feel it at all couldn't understand Zhou Man's words at the moment. The next day, Xiao Yuan was coming to turn her on. In fact, it was 3 times a day to observe the patient's condition. The pulse case had to be written in detail. Now they haven't developed acne, so they are not busy. They still have time to bring books and books. Some official documents come to deal with. Man Bao handed over the person to him and entered the palace. It was such a coincidence that it was her turn to be on duty in the palace today. Imperial physician Lu knew what they were doing, so he swayed over with a teacup and asked, "Have you come out of that place to change and wash?" "It's changed, you can come up with confidence." Imperial physician Lu then stepped forward and sat across from her, smiling, "What, have you got any acne?" "How can it be that fast?" she said. "Let's wait, but they look strong, but they are actually weak inside. Although they have been conditioned for 7 days, they are only average now, so the speed of acne should be fast." Imperial physician Lu nodded. After spending half a year in prison, and being escorted to Beijing from somewhere, naturally it's not much better. Imperial physician Lu said, "If you have acne, tell me, and I'll take a look." Man Bao nodded. However, the 3 patients did not develop pimples for 2 days in a row. Until the evening of the day when Imperial physician Lu was on duty, he found 2 small red pimples on the chest of patient number 3, and immediately reached out and touched his forehead and eyes. "Cannot help but shine." He turned around and went out and said to the servants who were guarding outside, "Number 3 has acne, go and tell Xiao Yuan Zheng and Zhou Tai, and ask them if they want to take a look." The 3 prisoners were ranked number 1, 2, and 3 according to their age. Number 3 was the youngest, only 19 years old. "I heard that he had acne, and his hands and feet became cold for a while. They don't do anything to them with a ball of cotton stuffed in and out of his nose, and he's about to forget about it. Although he is not very old, he also knows the importance of smallpox." He pursed his lips and asked, How many days can I live?" It was at this time that he faintly regretted, although he could not be reincarnated as a human being by beheading, and his food was not good at ordinary times, but at least he could live for half a year, but now. Imperial physician Lu glanced at him. You are in good health, you should be able to recover by taking good medicine. If the patient has no confidence in living, then there is no need for treatment. After listening to number 3, it was a little relaxed. When Man Bao and Xiao Yuan arrived, the sun was about to go down. The two went in to check on No 3's condition, and nodded with satisfaction. It's just a low-grade fever, it's fine, we'll look at the acne later. The other two patients couldn't help but ask, Sir, are we going to share a room with him? Man Bao stepped forward to examine them and said, Of course, the vaccinia is stuffed into your nose. If you can't even grow smallpox, then you probably won't catch it if you live in the same house. When they heard it, they felt relieved. Man Bao smiled slightly. If you don't get acne in 7 days, it means that this vaccine is useless. We will prepare another type of vaccine for you to try. Xiao Yuanzhang turned around and asked, Do you use acne paste? Zhou Man wrote 3 kinds of vaccination methods in Jizi. Although they are roughly the same, there are still many differences. The biggest difference is that the production methods of vaccinia are different. In the end, they unanimously chose the water vaccine method because they believed that the vaccinia prepared with pox scab was less toxic and less harmful to the patient. Man Bao nodded, just to compare the difference between the two vaccines. The two of them didn't feel very good. It seemed that the other method was worse than the current method. So the two turned to look forward to their acne. Maybe God heard their prayers, and the next day, both of them developed pimples. They also developed a few pimples on their chests and 2 on their necks. The 3 imperial physicians got busy, checked their pulses one by one, and finally came to the conclusion that they all had acne, and this was just the beginning. So the 3 of them discussed the treatment plan, and Xiao Yuan said righteously, The pimples haven't come out yet, and it's not very hot, so let's keep them for now, and let them drink more warm water. Needle. He said to Zhou Man, consider the general treatment first. Not everyone out there has your medical skills and acupuncture skills. Man Bao expressed his understanding and nodded in response. Because of the acne, the 3 of them did not dare to take it lightly. Every day, one person was on duty, and the 3 of them would gather together for consultation every afternoon. To the surprise of the 3 of them, number 3 only had a little acne, some on the chest, neck, and face. The fever lasted for 3 days on the body. Before everyone started taking the medicine, he started to reduce the fever, and then the smallpox began to shrink. Going down, the bright acne pulp inside has a tendency to fade a little. Not only Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu, but also Man Bao were stunned. After a careful examination, it was confirmed that he was really about to recover. This is. The 3 of them looked at each other, and all were refreshed, staring at number 3 as if they were looking at shiny gold. This is the weakest case of smallpox among all the diseases they have seen so far, and one of the most easily cured patients also has a high fever. The smallpox virus in the body seems to have to be burned to be fully released, and this process is also the most dangerous. Most of the patients who died of smallpox were not able to survive it. People often die before the smallpox is fully released. A small number of them died after the sores and acnes were not able to effectively reduce the fever, and the sores and acnes could not be healed. But number 3 has a tendency to recover without giving them the chance to take medicine. This is a case they have not seen before. Man Bao put his hand away and looked at Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu. Xiao Yuanzheng thought for a while and said, prescribe medicine to make him heal faster. So the 3 quit to prescribe medicine. The situation of number 2 and number 1 was not very good. Both of them developed acne very quickly, and there were more and more acne on their bodies. Yes, she also went to count the pimples, mainly because there are not many pimples on number 3, so when did she get a few pimples, and she recorded the total number of pimples. Imperial Physician Lu pulled out the needle on number 2, nodded to the servant standing by the side, let him put on clothes, then turned around and went out, untied the apron on the outside and threw it in the bamboo basket. He washed his hands and didn't take off his mask, so he said vaguely to Joe Man, "Number 2 has a high fever, I just gave him a fever-reducing needle, but the medicine can't be taken. Do you think I gave him a prescription for acne?" Son. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 2110. Man Bao stood at the door and looked at it and said, "He's getting pimples very fast now. If he promotes pimples again, will he be too aggressive?" Imperial Physician Lu frowned and thought for a while, "Then he's going to burn all night tonight. When I gave him the needle just now, it was very hot to the touch. He probably won't be able to survive it. Let's prescribe a comprehensive prescription to reduce the fever a little." Man Bao nodded, "Don't press the sores." "I know." So the two of them deliberated and discussed a recipe. It was not difficult to discuss. They prepared several useful recipes when they were in Xiaohu. Just some changes. The two wrote the prescription, and Man Bao took the medicine to the medicine rack next to him to grab the medicine. This was the medicine they had transferred from the Taiyuan hospital, and it was all useful. Packed in boxes with the name of the medicine written on it. Man Bao weighed out a packet of medicine and handed it over to the servant, "Go and boil the medicine." Number 3 recovered quickly, but the sores on his body began to scab in 2 days, and it is estimated that the scabs will fall off within 2 days. Man Bao looked thoughtful and said, "How about using his acne scab to continue the next test?" Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu couldn't help but look over, and then looked at the drowsy and unconscious patients on the 2 beds beside them, sighed and nodded. "He has recovered well, and the toxicity of acne can be seen from the condition of his acne. It shouldn't be very big. The situation of the other 2 people is not very good. Strange, it is obviously the same pox scab, and the weight is also the same. Why is the situation of the 3 people so different?" Man Bao frowned and said, "Because of age." Xiao Yuanzheng and Imperial Physician Lu just looked at the still young number 3, and then went to see number 2 and number 1, and that was the only reason. Dr. Lu said, "Judging from the situation in Xiaohu, the mortality rate of the elderly after suffering from smallpox is indeed higher, followed by adults and children and teenagers are the least." Man Bao also nodded. Xiao Yuan was pondering, "In the future, you have to get pox as soon as possible. I don't know how successful the success rate is. It would be better if it was like the situation of No 3. Man Bao said, "There are very few prisoners who are so young, right? So where do you go to find test subjects?" Xiao Yuanzheng said, "It is only among the family members of the prisoners who were implicated, so they have to go to the Dali temple to find them, but vaccination is very dangerous. Willing to risk this life?" Man Bao nodded slightly and looked at the situation again. If his acne scabs were less toxic, then the risk of subsequent vaccinations would not be too great. At that time, he could negotiate with Dali Temple and let them take the blame and make merit. There are people who think life is more important, and naturally there are people who want to give it a shot, seeking wealth, and wealth at risk. Neither Xiao Yuanzheng nor Imperial Physician Lu expressed any objection, but it is too early to mention this. The top priority now is to save the lives of these 2 people on the hospital bed. Otherwise, the 3 of them will die of smallpox infection. This mortality rate is even higher than that of Xiaohu. Hi. The 3 of them tried their best to treat him. Acupuncture and concoction took turns. No 2's condition gradually stabilized. The sores and pimples that appeared showed signs of improvement, and his fever was gradually subsided. The 3 of them breathed a sigh of relief, and then most of their attention turned to number 1. But he didn't know whether it was because he was older, or because his health was worse than the other 2. The high fever never subsided, and the smallpox couldn't all come out. Man Bao and the others couldn't see it, so they had to give him medicine to cool him down, but it couldn't be lowered at all, and even if he suppressed it, it would rebound violently afterward. Moreover, if the smallpox cannot be sent out, it will inevitably lead to other diseases. In the past 4 months, they have seen too much. At noon on the third day, Imperial Physician Lu took a pulse and glanced at number 1 who was lying on the bed with a pale face, shook his head and went out. "It's useless, it can't be saved." Man Bao went in to take a look, and couldn't help but gave him another set of needles, but at night the people were still gone. It is not the first time that everyone has seen a dead person, and they just sighed regretfully, and then it is time to record it. Man Bao looked at the pimples that were still fresh on his body, and couldn't help turning his head to look at number 3 and number 2 who had completely recovered. The two of them were startled when they met his gaze, and they took a step back together. Man Bao put down the small notebook in his hand, and said to Imperial Dr. Lu of Xiaoyuanzheng, "We haven't tried it yet. Can the people who come out of their acne really be able to stop infecting smallpox?" Imperial Physician Lu: "It's true that people who have had pimples won't have pimples again. Isn't this a well-known thing?" Xiaoyuanzheng understood what Zhou Man meant, but their situation is a little different, especially number 3. It didn't even take 5 days for him to recover from the acne. Moreover, there are few sores and pimples on his body, and he basically suffers no pain. To be honest, Xiaoyuanzheng is also a little trembling in his heart. If this pox is useless, will smallpox still be transmitted to him? Man Bao said, "There is a way to try it with the fresh acne pulp on him." Xiaoyuan was looking at number 1, who had only closed his eyes on the bed, with the red smallpox on his body. He became thoughtful. After a while, the 3 imperial physicians stepped forward with a piece of cotton cloth, punctured 2 fresh smallpox on his body, and then walked towards number 3 after soaking in the serum. Number 3 shivered, thinking they were going to stuff it into his nose again, but who knew that Man Bao took his hand, rolled up his sleeve, and stabbed his arm with a thick needle, all bleeding, and then he wiped the wound with the cotton cloth. Man Bao said, "Whether it works, I'll know in 2 days." Mr. Mo was overjoyed when he learned about this, and said, "The reason why you want to get the smallpox vaccine is to reduce the toxicity of smallpox, so that you can get immunity to smallpox without danger." He said, "According to the pulse case number 3 you gave, his condition is not even good. The best smallpox vaccine I know will not cause any discomfort except for a slight pain during injection. Successful people will have a pox mark left on their body, which is considered immune to smallpox." Man Bao listened to the yearning and asked, "Is this the cowpox method written in the book?" Teacher Mo said with a smile, "According to the records, cowpox is much safer than human pox. Unfortunately, I have been searching for a long time and haven't found a very detailed preparation method. However, I asked some colleagues and they all believed that cowpox vaccination should have been cultivated for several generations. At least it must be the 2nd generation, so that the toxicity will be greatly reduced." Man Bao asked, "It's the same as the water vaccine method for human pox, is it using pox scab powder to make a pox vaccine?" Teacher Mo shook his head, "I guess it is to use pox paste, so the effect will be faster. If it is as described in the book, cowpox is so much safer than human pox, then the smallpox virus that has been domesticated for several generations is not much toxic. The vaccination at this time should be direct vaccination, but unfortunately there is no injection there. Maybe you can directly pierce your arm and contaminate the wound with vaccinia like today." Man Bao pondered, "Since it's not clear, we can only try one by one." Teacher Mo also thinks so. Science is always trial and error. I was too sleepy tonight, and then I accidentally made a mistake. I owe it to the next day to make up for it. Good night. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2111. After waiting for 3 days, neither the 2nd nor the 3rd had any more pimples. The 3 imperial physicians breathed a sigh of relief. They bottled the pimple scabs collected from them, and then wrote a label and sealed it. The two still stayed in this house to recuperate, while Manbao and the others went to the palace to see the emperor after changing and washing. They brought along the notes they had taken down these days. The emperor didn't know much about medical skills, so he deliberately recruited several ministers to listen to him, especially old Master Tang, who had a criminal background and knew more about medical skills. As a representative, Xiao Yuanzheng explained the test data during this period in detail. The emperor turned over the pulse case on the table and handed it over to Gu Zhong so that he could show it to the adults below. Wei's Hixian glanced at the start time and asked, in other words, it has only been 15 days since the vaccination. Yes, Xiao Yuanzheng said, but in fact, the time for them to develop acne is only 5 to 9 days, which is also within the time of the onset of smallpox patients, but on average, the time for acne to appear is slightly lower than the overall time for acne. Manbao added, it's also because the number of people we tested was too small, so this data may not be very accurate. The emperor and several ministers heard what she meant, which is to want more people to test. The emperor knocked on the table, that is to say, vaccination is really useful, and people who have been infected with smallpox will definitely not get smallpox again. Wei Ji thought about the risks and poured a bucket of ice water on him. Your Majesty, only one of the 3 people died, this ratio is still too large, so many people may not die in war, this kind of acne method has to be done. Think again. Manbao immediately said, yes, human pox is still not safe enough, so I want to go to the western regions to find the method of cowpox. I heard that cowpox is much safer than human pox. I ask your Majesty to do it. Manbao gave a deep bow. The emperor waved his hand and said, we're not in a hurry to discuss this matter again. It's only the end of February. By the way, this number 3 seems to be much safer. Try again with the pimples on his body. Manbao and Xiao Yuan looked at each other and said, yes, the ministers also think so, and then compare with the number 2 to know whether the less toxic the pox scab is, the safer it is, and I will find out in the future. How to screen the right acne pulp for planting. Xiao Yuanzheng replied, it's just that there are no prisoners sentenced to be executed in the prison of the Ministry of Justice, and few sentenced to hanging, so. The emperor looked at the old Tang adults and the Minister of Punishment, and said, then why don't you ask other felons? If there are those who dare to answer, their punishment will be reduced. Old Master Tang frowned and disagreed with the reward rules. He said, Your Majesty, the criminals who will be sentenced to serious crimes are very vicious people. If they are released, it will be a great harm to the people, and it will be unfair to the victims. Therefore, he has always opposed the proposal that the emperor should amnesty the world for doing good deeds. Wei Ji also thinks so, and also expresses his opposition. The emperor said, since you want people's lives to be tested, you can't give no benefit at all, so who would do it? That's why we can't let them go. If they go out and then harm their neighbors, who will those who suffer and suffer? The law is the law, and it should not be changed too much. The emperor was a little angry. If the method of vaccinating pox can really be tested, it will be a matter of long-term success, so why should I give up this method? Seeing that they were about to quarrel, Manbao quickly said, Your Majesty, there must be brave men under the heavy benefit, but the heavy ceremony does not necessarily have to let them go, it can give them other benefits. She said, I think the food in the prison is very bad. You can tell them that if you are recruited, the prisoner will cover them with 3 meals for 10 or 20 years, and each meal will include fish, meat, and eggs, 1,000 miles to 1,000 miles, give me some more money. By the way, why don't you give the money before, then they want to spend money to atone for their sins or use it to eat, drink, and drink as they please. The emperor immediately said, yes, this method is good. Old Master Tang and Wei Ji stopped talking, and looked at the Minister of Punishment, who touched his chin and said, It's not impossible, but how much is the right amount? As he spoke, he glanced at Lu Shangshu and said, our penalty department's budget for this year is already small. If it is promised with heavy profits, it will have to be allocated by the household department. The Ministry of Housing. Lu Shangshu didn't expect that the fire would burn to him. Didn't he just come to listen? Hearing what the Minister of Punishment said, he couldn't help but say, the state treasury can't lay golden eggs on its own. Last year was already difficult. This year all ministries need money, and the holes owed last year have to be blocked. How can there be any extra money? The Minister of Punishment said, if even the Ministry of Household can't take out the money, then our Ministry of Punishment will not be able to take it. Elder Tang helped the Ministry of Criminal Justice, always take out some, or will people really be released? When they commit another crime, the Ministry of Justice will arrest people again, and it will cost a lot of money to go back and forth. Officials of the Ministry of Punishment also have money for business trips, which are also included in the salary, and also need to be paid by the Ministry of Households. Lu Shangshu glanced at the three people in the Taiyuan hospital, and hummed, at most 100 taels, there are no more. So stingy. It's just that the three full treasures still calculate in their hearts how many prisoners 100 taels are enough to invite. One person is not sick, and he needs to eat well and drink well for a month. If you get about 500 yuan, it will be about 5 taels that year. Even if it only counts for 10 years of food, you have to go to 50 taels, so wouldn't they be able to hire 2 prisoners? No, it's definitely not enough. She and Xiao Yuanzheng Imperial Physician Lu have calculated privately that the next second trial will require at least 12 patients, 3 age groups, 4 people in each age group, and 1 type of acne scab needs to be planted in 2 of the same age at the same time. In this way, the test data can be compared. In fact, it is still too few. If there are enough people, it should be expanded tenfold. However, they felt that even if it was a prison in the Ministry of Justice, they would not be able to find so many repeat offenders willing to do this test. But it seems a little difficult to get the Ministry of Household to give out 600 taels, so Man Bao said, 100 taels is too little, at least 1,000 taels. Lu Shangshu couldn't help choking when she saw that she had doubled tenfold. Although everyone in the courtroom always asked for the price to pay back the money on the spot, they would not shout more than 10 times as soon as they came up. Man Bao made a calculation for him. He had to make the prisoners willing to do experiments for them, and at least they had to provide the other parties meals for 10 years, right? So the two talked about the current price. The emperor and all the ministers watched the two of you come and go, and they said that today's vegetables are 6 cents a pound, and the other said, that's because it's spring now, and vegetables are scarce. Look at the summer and autumn, a pound of vegetables is at most 2 cents. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2112. Man Bao also simply said, then according to the 2 cents, a person should always eat 1 or 2 caddies of vegetables a day, and meat, even if it is eaten the next day. Now a caddy of meat, even pork, costs 12 cents. For a pound, chickens and cattle and sheep are even more expensive, even if you only eat half a caddy of meat the next day. Where to eat so much? 2 taels of meat is enough. Lu Shangshu said, and don't think I don't know, pork that is 12 cents a pound is good meat. We can buy some not so good meat, pig's head, some lean meat that is relatively firewood, and water, etc. You can get it for 5 or 6 cents for cheap, and 7 or 8 cents for expensive. The emperor and other ministers were stunned. Was the meat outside sold like this? Wait, why do they know so much? Forget about Lu Shangshu, he is the minister of the household after all, and his subordinates will send the price list every day, but Joe man, you are not from the household, and you don't have to go out to buy vegetables, how can you be so familiar? Man Bao naturally knew it from her father. Now that he has nothing to do, he goes to the vegetable market with his sixth brother or elder brother and sister-in-law. During this period of time, in order to facilitate the care of the three patients in Huangchuang, she often lived outside the palace. She woke up early in the morning and sat down with her father to eat breakfast, while listening to him talk about the increase of a penny today. A little cheaper. Having said too much, Man Bao wrote it down. The two of you came and went to bargain, and Xiao Yuan Zheng and Imperial Physician Lu were helping from time to time. Lu Shangshu estimated that 100 taels was too little, so he reluctantly mentioned 600 taels. However, the money is not directly given to the Taiyuan hospital, or even to the Ministry of Punishment, but said, when the time comes, the menu will be listed, and those who are willing to accept this item will order 3 meals a day from these menus or take turns. At the end of the month, the Ministry of Punishment and other expenses will be reported to my Ministry of Households. Still reluctant to give money directly. There are other methods, such as reducing the distance of exile, and the number of years is calculated separately. The Minister of Punishment felt that this was too troublesome, so he said that it would be better to pay the money in one lump sum, so that the treasury wouldn't be able to take out 600 taels, right? Lu Shangshu, a dead pig, said, yes, it is difficult to take it out. Otherwise, the Ministry of Justice will move it from other places, and this year, the Ministry of Justice will apply for a lot of money for foreign workers. The Minister of Punishment immediately stopped talking. Wei knows, Your Majesty, in addition to exile some felons to the border, they can directly change their military status. If they return to the civilian population, they may endanger one side, but in the army, there are sergeants who look after them, so they shouldn't cause trouble. Maybe they can do something good. The emperor asked Old Master Tang, what does Tang Qing think? Old Master Tang frowned in thought. Some felons in the prisons of the Ministry of Justice have to be escorted to work in the mines, which is really miserable, even worse than exiles. After all, they will be seen as slaves. Mining farms are basically dead within 10 years. In contrast, in the military, it appears to be much more graceful. Although he is still fighting for his life, it is possible to accumulate merits to justify himself. Even if the accumulated merit is not enough to justify the crime, life will be much better than in the mine. After all, he was going to fight with his life, so Old Master Tang no longer had any objections and nodded. So everyone tentatively decided on these reward methods, and went back to the Ministry of Punishment to choose them. The emperor was very satisfied with the results of Zhou Man and the others. Knowing that they were busy these 2 days, he asked them to go back to rest. Man Bao got 2 days off, which was to make up for the leave she took last 10 days. When she happily rode home with her medicine box, Xiao Yuanzhen's carriage came up from behind, the curtain was lifted, and she said, Zhou Imperial Physician, don't be busy with other tasks in the day after tomorrow, go to the punishment department to find me first, and we'll go pick someone together. Man Bao nodded. The carriage drove ahead of her. When she got home, she jumped off the horse and handed Qi to the servants. She took the medicine box and asked, are Bai Shan and the others at home? The young master and the second master went out to the Zhuangyuan building, and said that if Miss Man is bored back, she can go to the Zhuangyuan building to play with them. Have you finished the examination for the Ministry of Personnel yet? The Mingjing exam was held in the capital in the first month of the month. After the results were released in February, the exam of the Ministry of Rights was immediately followed. It was very simple. Go in and let the officials of the Ministry of Rights look at the face, look like Zhou, the height is suitable, and you can pass without any problems with your speech. It is the easiest. An exam. Then came the official selection exam for the Ministry of Personnel. Bai Shan didn't plan to choose an official, so although he passed the Jinchi examination, he didn't even go to the examination of the Ministry of Rights, but Kong Wengan and Qiaozijian still gave the students a holiday and allowed them to move freely. Yi Xiang went to take the test, but he didn't know how the test went. Man Bao thought for a while, and after carrying the medicine box back to his room, he rode to Zhuangyuan building to find them. Yi Xiang was giving them the exam questions from the silence department. Moreover, the Zhuangyuan building is now full of topics of discussion. Even if he forgets it for a while, he goes out for a walk, and when he hears them talking, he remembers it. Bai Shan looked at the exam questions and sighed, it really isn't easy. Yi Xiang nodded, most of them are very basic questions, most of them are questions about pushing officials, and there are questions about persuading Nangsang. The two questions are about the header of the official document and the header and end of the fold for His Majesty. To be honest, I was stunned for a while myself, and I don't know if I wrote it right. Feng Zongping said, there is also an example of letting the Ministry of Justice write a case, this is even more difficult. Yi Xiang nodded, but I've heard that the selection test for the economics department is much simpler than that for the Jinchi department. And some knowledge from other departments that they will use, but Jin's hike is a lot heavier than them, and I don't know how many people will be stuck this time. Bai Shandao, probably not. The Jinchi division has a small number of people. As long as the roles are not bad, they should be able to pass. Yi Xiang nodded, fortunately, there are not many difficult topics, but they are too fine. When Man Bao arrived, they had almost discussed it. When they saw her coming in, everyone got up to greet her, sat down, and ordered another meal for her. Man Bao asked Yi Xiang, how was your test? Yi Xiang smiled and said, it's average. Man Bao smiled and said, you still have merit in going to Xiaohu this time. If you rank higher in the official examination this time, you will take advantage of it when selecting officials. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they remembered this. It seems that those who have been to Xiaohu have been rewarded by the court. Zhou Man is better than them, and they have also been rewarded by the palace. Feng Zongping was refreshed and asked, so your Majesty also knows about us? Man Bao nodded, of course I know. It seems that Kong Jiju reported it. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2113. She just listened when she entered the palace, and she said to Feng Zongping, your grandfather must know about this, why didn't you ask him? Feng Zongping muttered, I didn't pass the exam, how could my grandfather tell me this? However, I was still very happy, and said to Yi Xiang, in this way, even if you show your face in front of your Majesty, and even if your ranking is not promised, your Majesty will remember you when you come to him in the future. Even if you can't remember it, some officials who have a good relationship with the Yi family will also hint that one or two will be remembered by His Majesty. That's how people connections are used. Yi Xiang was also a little happy. To thank Zhou Man for the information, Yi Xiang ordered another big meatball. Man Bao happily accepted. Feng Zongping asked her, how is your experiment going? There was no publicity about the smallpox experiment being conducted in the Taiyuan hospital, only some officials in the DPRK knew that Feng Zongping would know that it was not even what Feng Shangshu meant, but from Bai Shan and the others. After all, in the Chongguan pavilion, Zhou Man suddenly often lived in the palace, and could only see her in the cafeteria every 3 or 5 years, so he couldn't help but inquire. Although it is not easy to publicize this matter, after all, a piece of land in the suburbs of Beijing is specially set aside to raise smallpox patients, and the public is likely to panic when it is spread. But this is also an achievement, and it is not a secret in the court, so Bai Shan said it directly. The consequence is that the people headed by Zhao Liaolang can be as far away as possible from the eastern suburbs recently, and now they don't even go to the horse farms in the eastern suburbs. I heard that the eastern suburb racecourse can't get together for a polo match in the past 20 days. It's exactly the same as when the smallpox was raging some time ago. By the time the steward of the racecourse knew that there were smallpox patients locked up by the Imperial Hospital in Huangchuang, the business of the racecourse was already bleak. It was useless for him to find an owner. In the owner's words, let's not say that this matter was decided by the ministers in the DPRK and China, just say that where the house is now, who can let them move out? Just bear with it until they finish the test. How long will it take? The other party waved his hand indifferently and said, a smallpox patient can take up to 10 days and a half months, either dead or alive, count more time, 20 days is enough, just wait, and I will take the lead when they move out. Hold a polo match, give more prizes, and then snatch people back. Who knows, they only received one smallpox patient who died in Huangzhuang on the front foot, and the other 2 survived, and the rear foot punishment department selected 12 more prisoners to send there. The Ministry of Industry sent craftsmen over, and brought the servants of Huangzhuang to build 3 more rooms next to the courtyard for these prisoners to live in. One room is very spacious for 4 people. The owner and steward of the Dongjiao racecourse heard that they almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and finally gritted their teeth and said, forget it, let's hold the event first. We are 30 miles away from the imperial city, and the flower won't grow wings and fly over that day. Doesn't it mean that their house is far away from the Longshao Canal? Even the water used is staggered. The steward said, but where do those old ladies and gentlemen care about this? I just think our racecourse and Huangzhuang are in the eastern suburbs. There must be brave men under the heavy profits. We will issue an announcement to invite some good teams from Beijing and Yangzhou to warm up the field. Those noble sons and young ladies in the capital may mind this, but those who make a living playing polo will certainly not mind. When they warm up the field, will those young sons and young ladies who love to join in the fun come? It's just a lot of money spent. He couldn't help the heartache, and then asked, by the way, who else is the imperial doctor leading the imperial hospital other than Xiao Yuan Zheng? I heard that there is also a Dr. Lu and a Dr. Zhou. Education Dr. Zhou, he remembered, then gritted his teeth and said, let's set up the venue first, and then post a post to the 3 imperial physicians, and give them money to be judges. Steward, let the imperial physician be the judge. Dong Jia said, this is to reassure them. It's enough to invite a few more reliable judges. Don't mind the scores of the 3 of them. Then the steward responded, and then asked, then the ceremonial gold? The owner thought for a while and said, 10 taels, that's a lot. The steward should go down and take orders. Manbao didn't know that there would be an extra charge. She was looking at the 12 prisoners who had just arrived in the Huangchuang. The age groups are over 30 years old, 20 to 30 years old, and 20 years under. There are 4 people in each age group, and the age difference between them is not very large. Manbao numbered them, starting from number 4 down, still arranging them according to age, all the way to number 15. The 15th is the youngest. There are 4 people in a room. After the numbering is done, she also wrote a piece of paper and pasted it on their bedside, so that the servants and prisoners can be better seated. Manbao and Xiao Yuanzheng imperial physician Lu checked their bodies and said, I'll rest for a few days before I start. Then also gave them a recipe for meals. The number 2 and number 3 who survived next door did not receive such treatment, but the food and drink was still much better than in prison, and because they no longer had the smallpox virus on their bodies, Xiao Yuan was asking people to remove their shackles, and then arranged for them to enter the prison. The servants take care of the 12 new arrivals. He said, anyway, sending them back to the Ministry of Punishment is to stay in the prison with worms. It's better to stay here and make the best use of it, and I also want to see if they will continue to be exposed to smallpox patients and whether they will be infected. Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu nodded in agreement. The servants and the Imperial guards guarding outside are already very experienced, so they don't need to worry too much about the three Imperial physicians, they just prescribe the diet and give them needles to condition their bodies. The craftsmen from the Ministry of Industry also led people to build 3 rooms on the other side of the yard. The middle one is the pharmacy, and the left and right rooms are the rest rooms for the Imperial physicians. In this way, they don't have to go all the way to change and wash, and the medicine cabinet no longer has to be placed in the main room. Even the smallpox scab that has been kept in the box has been moved to the pharmacy and locked. When all this is done, 3 days will pass. Man Bao and Xiao Yuanzheng checked the physical condition of the 12 patients and said, "You should be able to start pox vaccination in 2 days." Xiao Yuanzheng also thinks so, this time the base is bigger and more comprehensive than last time. Speaking of which, he is still a little nervous. I hope everything goes well. After checking the body, Man Bao took the medicine box and said goodbye. Now the vaccinia has not started planting, so they don't have to be on duty at night. As he came galloping, he restrained his horse when he was about to pass them by and shouted, "Is Zhou Imperial Physician in the car?" Man Bao lifted the curtain and said in surprise when he saw the person coming, "Mingli? Why are you here?" Mingli was overjoyed, "Miss Man, the little one is going to invite you. Our wife is about to give birth. I finished the drip today. I shouldn't have to go to the hospital tomorrow, so the supplements will be put in tomorrow. Good night."